Here's the big question this show answers. How do we leverage technology and human science to positively impact our personal and professional life? The Tech Human Experience has the answer. Here's your host, Inc. 5000 tech founder, neuroscience junkie, and Navy SEAL wannabe, Javier Guerra.
Hello, my fellow tech humans. Today's guest is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer of Jefferson Bank, with over 20 years of experience in information and network security. He is a leader who works hard at motivating teams to reach ambitious goals. Please welcome Roman Medina. Appreciate your time today, Roman.
Thank you, Javier. It's great to be here.
Yeah, always good talking with you for sure. So let's start off with an important stat that, in a recent study found that less than 50% of Americans use two-factor authentication for their personal online accounts. As I read that, what comes up for you?
For me, it's quite concerning. Of course, working for a financial institution and leading the cybersecurity information security program. Those are still whether you think username, password, or where the state of authentication is at. That's still the main way to access some of your financial accounts online and perform financial activities. So, it's a very, very concerning stat there in today's threat landscape about not enforcing two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? I mean, unless you're living under a rock, it's the fact that 50% of Americans don't use it. I'm very surprised by that. I'm almost wondering if it's like people don't care, or there's just like lack of knowledge around it, right? I mean, us being in the technical space, we're hyper aware of this stuff, but I guess I've kind of lost touch with just the general population that doesn't really, think about technology as much as we do. But it just seems to me like that's after everything that's been going on in the news and the world and everything, that it would not be that high. It's crazy.
Yes.
that it's that high.
Yes, and I think as the generations start aging into the workforce and conducting more of their lives, they conduct everything online nowadays. But I think that might be leading to some of that gap, and I think some of it is also kind of responsibility of being good stewards of these organizations or financial institutions to enforce two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication, providing that awareness. With any of our customer-facing online banking applications, we do require multi-factor. We call it a secure access code. It's a text message that goes to their registered mobile device or a phone call. Some of our more higher risk type of customers, and maybe business banking customers that we call our treasury management customers, they also have a soft token. So it's a virtual soft token that they have to use not only to log into their online banking as being their primary means of getting access, but as they perform certain activities in their online banking sessions, if they're creating a wire transfer, if they're doing an ACH transfer, they will be required to authenticate again using that two-factor authentication just to prove who they are. It's always a layered defense. They get through one gate, perhaps we provide another hurdle to stop the fraudsters, later down their means of whatever they're trying to do in that financial transaction.
Okay, so it's still kind of mind-boggling. It's good that you guys do that, right? Especially with the type of information you guys are handling, right? That you make it a requirement, because there could be, of course, some untech-savvy customers that don't use it, right? So it's almost like you have to make it a requirement. Okay, so let's dive into today's topic. The Agile approach to cybersecurity, adapting to an ever-changing landscape. In today's episode, we'll discuss the fast-paced nature of cybersecurity. We'll dig into the importance of staying aware of the latest threats, technologies, and end-user behaviors. So Roman, serving in the capacity that you serve, right? What are some of the key elements you're incorporating as you update your IT and cybersecurity risk management programs?
Yes. So it is so ever quickly evolving and changing. I've been with Jefferson
Mm.
Bank going to be 10 years in February, and I've changed my strategy, my approach numerous times. I've even changed it within a matter of months, depending on what is going on in the landscape, what type of skill sets and resources we have within our own team. And like you mentioned, in our risk management, IT cybersecurity risk management area, about 2 years ago, we said, we needed to focus more in providing effective risk management. We use a lot of third parties. We rely on a lot of partners to get things done in our banking functions. So, one area that we did is we hired a cyber risk analyst, and this person is going to be solely dedicated to staying ahead of the risk, whether that's risk research, performing risk management, third party risk management, security awareness training. There is there are enough job duties and responsibilities for this individual to take forth and carry forward. And so one of the things we're going to do is we've always had a risk management program, and it's tailored with what our regulators expect us to do. And this year I'm going through totally revamping that process in what we do. So we're in the process of defining what that's going to mean or what that's going to look like. But that's a big part of how we try to stay ahead of the threats and risks.
Like you said, it's changing. Like the world is changing at a rapid pace. The economy's changing. Technology's changing. So with all this change, it's challenging to stay ahead of this, right? I completely understand that, right? Especially in a role like yours, because of the cyber threat landscape is just so dynamic. Um, if if somebody was in, say your shoes from a financial institution, um, do you see that different in any way, like specifically to banking, that is maybe different from healthcare or different from some other industry, right? Like, is there any particular nuance that's coming to mind right now of like some of those elements that you're having to incorporate specifically for a financial institution?
Yes, I think cybersecurity, information security will look very different across different verticals and different
Mm,
industries. Quickly, what comes to mind: um, banks, financial institutions have been heavily regulated for years, for a number of years. Some of these other air industries, take healthcare or critical infrastructure like utility type of organization, has regulations. They might be more privacy focused and not necessarily from a technical security standpoint per se. But quickly what comes to mind is ransomware. We see a lot of municipalities, uh, uh, school districts, those type of organizations being attacked with ransomware because they know that certain other industries are probably more mature in their controls and their backups and their ways to prevent or detect ransomware. So they do often try to find that vertical where they would probably be successful in carrying out a ransomware attack. So that's just one example of how it'd be different at an FI. Not that we're not concerned with ransomware, but we've had many years of establishing those controls and procedures that if a threat like ransomware comes up, we feel pretty confident that we could protect and defend against that.
yeah, yeah, that's good. I mean, it's a closely. I mean, it's pretty much all about money. All these threats are coming at organizations or people in general, but you guys are like handling money, right? So it's very close to the pot of gold, so to speak. Uh, yeah. So how are you working really to make risk assessments more objective and meaningful in your organization or in your team, your organization?
Yeah, this has been one area that I've kind of really struggled with, but hopefully my approach may not seem too radical or everyone is used to a risk management process where you identify your threats or your risks. You have a formula where you take the likelihood and impact into consideration, and likelihood and impact will result with your inherent risk. And that could be a score, that could be a 3-point scale, score, small, medium, high, could be a 5-point scale, right? Who knows, however approach you want to take. And I think we sometimes get a little stuck in the weeds of, is it really a likelihood of 4 versus a 3.5? Why are we going to focus on that tiny detail? And I'm hoping to establish some sort of process where it's just, is it a threat or risk that we care about? Yes or no. Trying to make it as binary and open closed as we can. Do we care about it? Yes. Then let's ensure that we have the proper controls to arrive at a residual risk of, are we doing enough? Yes or no. Let's not get caught up in the formulas or the methodology or the framework of it all. And I think it takes out some of that objectivity, right? Someone may think risk A is way higher than risk B, type of thing. So I'm hoping that'll be a way for us to really focus on what is the true risk for certain areas. One other thing that I want to do is, like we said, follow the money and all that is really, it is hard to come up with a quantified risk management approach in cybersecurity, information security. We can try to determine what a breach would cost us, but you're always going to get in the millions of dollars. So, I want to look at our financial statements, our income statements. See what are those lines of business that are the highest profit earning for the bank. And if something were to happen in one of those lines of business, that those customers, the technology that they use, then that'll have a significant impact on our bank. So I'm trying to identify those higher impact areas based on dollars or profit value, right? And I know I can't always focus on the dollars, right? We mentioned follow the money and the dollars of it dollars of it all, but it could be a line of business that's not very profitable, but they have very sensitive data. They may have access to how our fraud prevention systems work, or how our ATMs work, or they may have access just to social security numbers, driver's license, secure access code, pins, whatever the case may be. So we also going to try to get down to, what are those high profit areas? They would have the biggest impact if something happened. What are those areas that have a lot of sensitive private data that we have to ensure is always protected, type of thing. So hopefully just by approaching it that aspect, and we can't identify every risk. Everything's going to have some risk out there. So I think if we focus on those two areas, we would probably mitigate our top concerning risks for the bank. And whatever control we apply for one business area, why couldn't it work across the enterprise? It's bound to help the rest of the enterprise as well. So I'm hoping that might be a better way of tackling risk assessments and risk management here within the bank. And then hopefully our business areas don't see it as such a burden, such a paper-based exercise or compliance checkmark type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, it's the perception, right? Everybody's different. And even, we work with a lot of security professionals and at a high level, even at the C level, the way that it's almost like the way that they handle their areas, some things could be just that checkbox, right? That compliance checkbox, right? We're going to come in, we're going to get audited. Let's just check the box. Whereas others, I think, are a little bit more strategic, right? And they're really digging into, how do we incorporate a lot of the human element and systems in other departments, right? And how do we collaborate from a cyber culture, what we call, some of the things we call cyber culture, right? But that we really believe that needs to bleed through the entire organization, because, if IT is only handling it, or the cyber area is only handling it, well, they're going to be much more savvy than some other department that doesn't really touch technology as much, right? And so they may be more of a target to be able to infiltrate the organization or data, right? So it's interesting, and you've kind of already touched on that strategy a little bit. But can you think of anything else that you could add, maybe that would to kind of ensure that risk management is deeply embedded into the organization, right? Not just checking those boxes.
Yeah. So one other big focus or big priority for myself in this new cybersecurity risk management process that we're going to do is those higher profit business areas, lines of business. We're going to put them on a schedule, and we're going to have face-to-face meetings. I'm not going to call it a risk assessment or risk management. I'm just going to call it a cyber risk meeting. And in those meetings, we'll discuss, tell me about your line of business. What technology are you using? What type of customers? What type of data do you have? Trying to make it a conversation, and asking them, and then just flat out asking them, what do you think are your, what is your top cyber information security risk? And try to get into how they're thinking. Like you mentioned, security culture. What does security mean to that person? I know what security means to me, but it could be slightly different for that individual that's on the business side. So in these cyber risk meetings, we'll talk about, me and my team will go prepared with what are those threats and risks that are pretty well known right now that's affecting their line of business, and we'll bring it up during that discussion. Have you heard of this? Have you thought of that? How would that impact your area? And then ending that meeting with just asking them if there's one thing that you needed from InfoSec, from information security. What is that thing that you need that would make your job better, make your work life better? How can we help you? And I'm very curious to see what that one thing is for that business area. And then me and my team will make it a priority for that one thing that they mentioned, whether it's as simple as, I wish our web filter didn't block a certain category of websites, or I wish we had a password vault or a password manager. It's going to be a priority for me and my team to help them with that. I think if we start helping them, or getting some wins, they might see us more as a partner, someone that'll work with them instead of just being a speed bump and kind of getting in the way of their operations because we're adding controls to their process.
Yeah, yeah. It makes me think of just from a human perspective, right? Like we'll take clients through different workshops and stuff like that when it comes to this, just to kind of look at their perspective, or even widen their perspective on things. And it's fascinating how different people within the same organization can be getting the same message from leadership, but their perception of what they should do about it or how they should handle it is completely different. And it just, communication is such a hard and ever learning / evolving skill set, right? And it's difficult, but it makes me think about the method of duplication. And I forgot who came up with this, but I think it was like not a Nobel Prize winning, but an award-winning teacher out of New York. And he talked about the method of duplication when you're communicating, is that the most effective way to communicate is to tell somebody or communicate something to somebody and then ask them what they heard in return. It's like, okay, what did you hear? Repeat back to me, because 9 times out of 10, there's gonna be some sort of a tweak to what they heard, and there's gonna be some misalignment there. And then when you're going in there, and I love how you're not calling it an assessment, right? Because when people hear the word assessment, I think of audit, right? And it's like an IRS audit, or it's like nobody likes that. It just automatically comes with a negative connotation. But it's like you're kind of leading in a different way, and I like that. And it makes me think about security awareness training, right? It's like a lot of people just hate having to do security awareness training, but I know that some organizations are really leveraging like fun security awareness training, and it could be humor infused, whatever. What are you guys doing to kind of help from a security awareness training perspective?
Yes. So like you said, yes, being a financial institution, we have those trainings that are mandatory. Our regulators will come in and want to ask, have they done their GLBA training, which is Graham Leach Bliley? And so we try to separate the two. We try to distinctively state this one system is mandatory because our regulators, our examiners will look for these for completion. And we use a totally different system for, I kind of call that as our mandatory training. And then I really try to focus on calling the other one just security awareness, right? I try to take the training aspect out of it, This is our security awareness materials. And the approach that we've taken is we do monthly videos, and we stick to some guardrails. We stick to that monthly. It has to be a video. It has to be less than 5 minutes, and it cannot be a PowerPoint type of presentation. There's going to be no quiz at the end. There's going to be no reporting out on or tracking down certain individuals because they have not completed it. We're flat out saying these are not mandatory, but these are fun. We think you'll enjoy them. Like you said, we focused on something that is comedic. It's told in a way of a story. And for example, some of the awareness videos that we've used, it's kind of reminds me of the show The Office. So it's in an office environment, and you have certain scenes or scenarios playing out, but they're really driving the point of a security matter or a security issue. For example, it could be something as one person posting too much data on social media about potentially landing a big client, a sales meeting, and then they get into it gets into the funny aspects of why you shouldn't do that, and something goes wrong with that sales lead. It kind of is like a little 3 to 5 minute TV series, that's scripted and the actors are great, and that's one thing that we've done so far for many years, and I often do get compliments from individuals throughout the bank saying that they enjoyed that last security video, or they even remember the names of the characters in the security awareness materials, and they'll state that person's funny, or it does remind them of so-and-so in the office. So it starts generating that conversation amongst them in their own departments or their own teams. So I think those have been effective. And like I mentioned, it's not mandatory. We do look at the numbers just to see the completion rates. They're not great, but we always stay within the 40-50%. So we feel we're reaching half of our employees, and we hope to reach the other 50%, just by word of mouth, right? You start getting other employees involved in it. They're going to share it with their coworkers. They might be laughing or giggling at their desk or their office, and people may want to know, what are you laughing at? What are you watching there? Type of thing. So that's our approach. That's one way of doing it.
That's interesting. When I think about human nature, right? It's I would say the majority of humans, they don't like to be like forced to do something they don't want to do, right? And I'm curious as to maybe what some research says out there on approaching it that way, of not saying this is mandatory, you have to do it, more so of like this is here for the organization and for your benefit. It's fun. Hey, take a peek at it, when you have time. It's just it's a less dictatorship approach to to awareness, so to speak. So I guess the way that you and the organization handles this type of stuff, can you think of any success stories of how maybe some of this awareness has helped a potential security breach, threat, anything like that?
Yeah, one example comes to mind, and this will be sort of a it has a good ending to the story, where it makes it a success. But we think a big threat for our employees is that one phishing email, whether it's a invoice type scam, or CEO type of a phish that goes out to employees. So we focus on some of those as well for our employees. We do a lot of those type of training videos and awareness materials or security tips that we send out bi-weekly as well. So and then one thing that we always harp on is, if there's ever anything suspicious or there's an incident, send it over to information security. We'll take a look, even if you think it's nothing serious, or if you feel bad that you made a mistake. We're just gonna help you. So yeah, one quick story. We did have some fictitious invoice emails that did make it past our web filters. These are our email security gateway, and we did have one employee that did click on the link and started to enter their username and password in this fake 365 login page. As soon as the individual did that, she felt uneasy about it, and she quickly picked up the phone, sent an email to information security and said, you know what, as soon as I entered my username and password, she was, I just felt that, pit in my stomach that I should not be doing this. And I remembered some of the trainings that you guys have provided, and to send the notification to InfoSec. So even though I did that, I wanted to let you guys know, wanted to let you and your team know right away that I did this. So, my team was quickly able to start looking into that email, and we realized it went out to the entire organization. Going back to multi-factor authentication, any access even to our banking systems, we have multi-factor on that. So we did see the fraudster try to log into her Outlook.com account, but because we have MFA, we could see that those were not successful. Those were not the attack was not successful. So yeah, that's why I say it was a good success story. She remembered her training. She remembered that something didn't feel right. Let me just let InfoSec know it might be something bad. It might not be something bad. And the third thing is she reported it. She followed our incident reporting communications or procedures where we just say, is there anything out there you have a question on? We'll be happy to look at it. We won't ever receive those requests as if it's a burden or extra work or anything like that. I think me and my team are good in assisting our end users. So that's one success story. It did happen here at bank, but it was able to be thwarted. Going back to the MFA and the security awareness, materials in there that helped this individual.
Yeah, it makes me think about Project Aristotle. Have you heard of that project that Google did?
It sounds familiar, but it's not coming to mind. Is it with the YubiKeys?
It was, I don't think so. It was years back. It was maybe 5 years ago. And what they were doing, they studied hundreds of teams, and they were looking for, like, what is it that makes a high performing team, or like the best teams in the world. And the single biggest determining factor of that was the most crucial element of high performing great teams was an environment of psychological safety. And so the fact that your team member made a mistake and basically threw themselves under the bus and said, hey, I think I just made a major mistake, when a lot of times people would be scared that, depending on leadership, of what the environment is like, it speaks to the need for that psychological safety, that if they don't feel comfortable, they're going to get fired because they made that mistake and they hide it. That's way worse. And so it's like, it's creating that environment that people feel safe to, hey, I messed up. Like, I need to let you know so we can resolve the issue. It's huge. Yeah. So, from a human perspective, stats say that like 97% of security breaches come from some sort of a human vector, a human element, right? And the business world is changing, the economy is changing, technology is changing at a rapid pace, right? And so it drives a lot of change, and typically humans are adverse to change, right? If there's too much change, it could create fear. If it's coming at them too fast, they could start to get overwhelmed. They can start to burn out, right? Can you talk a little bit about, the importance of how we can approach, or how we can ensure that our people aren't burning out, so to speak, and, increasing the risk of making bad decisions because of burnout?
Yeah, so this is an area where, myself with my team, I want to make sure, like you just said, I think information security teams, cybersecurity teams, they're analyzing a lot of data. There might be a lot of alerts, a lot of information coming at them. We want to make sure that they are, they have that mental wellness, and they're rested, they're sharp, they can make those decisions, they have the appropriate judgment. So, one thing that I try to do definitely is, balance out the work within my team. I try not to go to certain individuals for one thing, and try to really, I don't really keep it as a formal, how many things are you doing versus that person or project. But like I said, just try to balance the work across the team members. And we do also rely on our third parties. We have some managed security providers or managed service providers that we rely on. And I constantly always, I think technologists or information security professionals, tend to want to resolve the issue themselves, and they tend not to ask for help, and then that might lead for burnout. So constantly reminding my team, we have these resources, we have these third parties, send it to them, maybe get another fresh set of eyes looking at it, ask for their help. That's why we pay them. Ask them for their help, that they'll help us out with this. And then plain old, just trying to make the job fun, trying to not make it more of a directive of me barking out orders or commands, but just making it fun for our employees. And I think that just comes down to that leader getting to know their employees, and knowing them a little bit on a personal level. I can say that I do know I have a small team, but I know the names of their kids. I know primarily how old they are, their significant others, what they like to do outside of work. We have one team member right now, it's on vacation, and she's still sending us little messages on Teams of what she's doing on her adventurous vacation right now. But so that tells me they enjoy being here. It's not a burden to be here at work, and we try not to make it always about work. We might add in a happy hour every now and then to get to just unwind and talk and laugh and joke around. We definitely, it's very light in the work area. We like to laugh and joke around, like I mentioned. So I think trying to keep it at that level really helps staying in that mental wellness, that'll then just lead to better work productivity across the board, better corroboration, better communication, willingness to work within a team.
Yeah, and I just drew a blank on what I was thinking, but it made me think of something. It'll come back to me. But, as far as with all the change coming at you guys, right, and just the world in general, and the businesses in general, is there a way that you kind of like gauge when it's just like it's getting to be too much change, or there's just too much coming at the team? Like, is there a way that you can identify that or gauge it in some way?
I think it goes back to like you mentioned, communicating earlier. You mentioned that, and I think just knowing your team. I think if you know them a little bit more on a personal level, you can kind of feel when they're frustrated, when they're overworked, when they're and coming out of the years that many organizations have had with COVID back to 2020, 2020, 2021, some of 22 was really a burden. There was really hard to find different ways to get certain things done. Projects that may have taken a year, had to be done within 3 months or 2 to 3 months because of the state of COVID it was bringing about. So I think keeping a close eye on your team, looking for some of those cues of when you see them frustrated, or when you might see uh, maybe a mistake or a thought that it's like, it's kind of odd for you to usually don't make that error. Is everything okay? One thing that I set out this year was, from a project standpoint, it was going to be nothing new. We weren't going to do anything new, no implementations. We already have a lot of tools, a lot of resources. We are going to look at what we already have and how can we improve it. Is there some functionality that we have not taken advantage of? Is it every project has those little leftovers, right? Where it's like, well, we couldn't get to it on the project, but we're going to fix that as soon as we go live, type of thing. So, what are all those things, those leftovers that we haven't accomplished? So, this year was that year of just getting better with what we have, and next year is going to be a continuation of that, because even though we had no new efforts, we still support the business areas, we still support IT and all of their efforts. And COVID, we still deal with some of that a little bit here, but financial institutions, we're dealing with, just like every other organization, what's going on with the economy and inflation and those sort of things. So we still have a lot of work. So we're trying not to just add more to our plate. Yes.
Yeah, and I like the way you put that, leftovers, right? Instead of saying waste, right? Because there's definitely a lot of waste at organizations with different technology tools, or just tools being handed over to operations that don't get implemented, right? But it's a really good way to frame it. It's like, hey, let's look at the resources that we currently have and making sure that we're using them to their full potential, and that maybe they're spreading out through the organization in a productive, way to where we're getting the best bang for our buck for investing in these tools and these technologies, right? Because like so many times organizations just want to keep buying more and more. I need more tools. I need more tools. I need more tools. But then, you come in, somebody comes in and does like an audit of like their technical spend and what they're using, and they find out there's overspending on all these subscriptions, and different departments are buying similar technologies when they can kind of consolidate into just using one. So yeah, I like that framing on it. It's let's look at our leftovers and see if we have something to eat there, so to speak. And then I remember what I was going to say earlier, and it's you were talking about like your team member that was out, or that is out or was out, and they were kind of sharing their vacation with the rest of the team, and it made me think of friendship, right? Because there's a lot of stats that show that if people have friends at work, they're more likely to be engaged, they're more likely to stay long term, right? They're less likely to want to leave because they have those relationships, and it's important. I 100% believe it's important for leadership to have those connections with the team and understand. So I love how you understand who your people are and their families and all that kind of stuff, because that goes a long way. And studies like Gallup show that 70% of the U.S. workforce is not engaged at work, and I really because it's because of the lack of connection. It's the lack of whether that's caring, they don't care, or they're just too busy. But anyway you look at it, it's the lack of that human connection that causes, I think, a lot of those issues throughout the teams. Yeah, so that's good stuff. So we're getting close to time here. So I'll just ask you one final question, Roman. In your opinion, what technology do you think the world needs that doesn't exist yet?
Oh wow, it's a very loaded question. Let me see. I think the technology the world needs, today that probably doesn't exist out there. It is concerning with where we're headed with artificial intelligence and deep fakes and what news source is real, what isn't, type of thing. And it's something I see local news stations, where they do truth or fiction type of thing and debunked certain information that might be out there in the world. So I mean, I would love for there to be a type of technology that can quickly sort out the truth from fiction type of thing for us, instead of someone trying to do their own research and forming their own opinion on what they find online, and just because one news site or one blogger or whatever may be saying something. So I think that is one thing that, aside from banking, but just looking at our world, our country, and how that cyber warfare has been coming up, and kind of getting just downright a little bit dangerous. The disinformation, the inaccurate information out there, and how it spreads so easily across to certain individuals. So, um, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but some sort of technology that can quickly, be able to sort out that fact or fiction for end users.
Yeah, that would be powerful, and it makes me think about when I got COVID the first time. I don't even know when it was anymore, 2019, 2020, but I was, quarantined for 2 weeks. I had it pretty bad. I probably had a fever for like 2 weeks. And I started like just hanging, like looking at social media. I typically try to stay away from it, but it was during, I think, the election, or it was probably during the election, and I was seeing just very biased information about one political party, and just bashing and presenting the other side as evil, like pure evil, right? And I, after a couple of days, I was like, what is going on here? Why am I not seeing the other side of that? And so I started doing some digging, and I started searching specifically for the other political party, and then it flopped. It actually was like painting the other side as like, angels, and the other one is like evil. And I was like, what is going on here? So I started doing some digging, and then I found the Netflix series called oh man, what is it called? There's a Netflix series that talks about like the social dilemma is what it's called. And it's talking about the algorithms that are built into these things to basically get you hooked on staying on these platforms. Because for every minute or every second you stay on the platform, they're getting advertisement dollars, right? Because they're getting you hooked. And so the algorithms are feeding you what you want to see and what they're learning that are going to keep you like scrolling, what my wife would call scrolly moly, right? And yeah, and so it was like mind boggling, but that is going to get crazy powerful and crazy rampant with stuff like ChatGPT and deep fakes, like you're saying, because the technology is getting so advanced, it's almost hard to tell. Like, and then they'll make it entertaining and they just get you hooked on watching it, right? And so, that's going to be a huge problem. And, I understand, like we understand a lot about this stuff, but like just normal everyday people that are not as ingrained in technology as we are, it's concerning about like, because I've literally seen extended family members that are like livid about some of the stuff they're seeing, but they think it's all completely true. Like they don't know how powerful these technologies are and misleading they are. And it's scary, some of the things that I've seen in my own research. So I would 100% agree with you. There needs to be some sort of technology that acts as a filter, that maybe gives us some sort of a data science platform to give us the probability of its authenticity, so to speak. And I think that, that's definitely going to get developed by somebody, but I think, the sooner the better. Yeah. So for Roman, really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your thoughts. I know Jefferson Bank has some great opportunities out there right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, yes, I can. Yeah, we have a few open positions. Unfortunately, none on my team on the information security or cybersecurity at the moment. But our IT side does have a network operations engineer position open. They work very close with the InfoSec team. Jefferson Bank's been growing, so it's a crucial, vital position within our organization. We have some BSA, AML, investigator type of positions open. BSA is Bank Secrecy Act. AML is anti-money laundering. So that's another critical, important area of our bank that also works very close with information security as well. So when sometimes they have their investigations, we collaborate and help each other out in that regard. So those are just some of the 2 or 3 positions that are open right now in our bank. Of course, we have some other banking roles, teller or relationship banker that are always very useful and helpful in us carrying out our operations. But that's what's open at the moment for us here at Jefferson Bank.
Nice, perfect. So, I appreciate that. And, Tech Human listeners, be sure to check out Roman's work on LinkedIn, follow him on social media, and check out Jefferson Bank if you're interested in one of these roles that Roman's talking about. There will be website links and social handles in the show description. And, Roman, as a leader in tech, promise this is the last question. What's like one piece of small, actionable advice that you could give to emerging cybersecurity leaders?
The one thing that I would say that I really try to carry out this trait myself is being an active listener. I like the facilitative leadership type of framework and all of that, and how to have an effective team. And I'm just going to go back to, I heard my son and daughter's karate instructor the other day laid it out plain and simple. He said, you have 2 ears, you have 1 mouth, so you should listen better than you should. So I think that is one trait that leaders, they should listen to their employees, they should listen to their team. And that just kind of, if you want to be successful in cybersecurity, information security, I think having a great team, you need to have a great team behind you. It's not all just myself carrying out this program or this mission of the bank. It's the team behind me. I don't think we would have a successful, great program like we do with our team. So active listening to your team members will go a long way.
That's huge. Yeah, that's definitely a major part of communication, right? And I've been blessed to have a lot of training in that space that I actually lead like, executive leadership groups through levels of listening, right? In a strategic way at basically helping people to understand how to effectively listen. And there's multiple levels of listening at a very deep level, and we don't have time to get into it on this episode, but I am planning on recording an episode that is basically on the science of listening, to go very in depth for an entire episode. So yeah, so really appreciate your time, Roman. It's great talking with you. Thank you for all the insights. Don't forget, listeners, don't forget to help your fellow tech humans. Share this podcast and follow me on LinkedIn at Javier Guerra 360. See you next time on the Tech Human Experience.
The Tech Human Experience